hours after Joe Biden signed a bill that will lower the cost of healthcare and prescription drugs, crack down on billionaire tax cheats, and do more to fight climate change than any government has in history. Here was a headline in the New York Times. Even on Biden's big day, he's still in Trump's long shadow. Subhead: for the sitting president, even a triumphant ceremony to sign major domestic legislation can hardly break through the nonstop attention on his predecessor. Dan just took a deep breath. I don't know if the sigh came through.
Nothing makes me more crazy than the media passively covering the things the media has control over. This is a story about Donald Trump overshadowing Joe Biden, written by the people who are covering Donald Trump and forcing him to overshadow Joe Biden. And they are proving the point of the article by writing a story about Trump overshadowing Joe Biden, therefore overshadowing Joe Biden on his big day on that day. Like, you people have agency here. He doesn't have to overshadow him. That's a choice you made. You can't. It'd be like if Peter Baker went out and sprayed graffiti on the White House and then went out and wrote a story about vandalism afflicting the Biden administration. It's like, you did it. You're responsible for this.
Words cannot describe how on point this is from Jon Favreau and Dan Pfeiffer, two hosts of Pod Save America, because for years, we've been told by the same people who report the news that they apparently have no say in what they report, even as they make the conscious decision about what to report. Make sense? Yeah, I didn't think so. And so in this instance, when Joe Biden signed the Inflation Reduction Act, which was the biggest climate investment in history, finally allowed the government to negotiate lower drug prices, shored up the ACA, and made tax-cheating companies and individuals pay their fair share, that was immediately overshadowed by whatever legal jeopardy Donald Trump found himself in. Why? Because the media has decided that people don't want to hear about Democratic achievements, they want to hear about Donald Trump in conflict. And so they don't try, because that's the conventional wisdom. Except the conventional wisdom isn't based on anything other than what the media has always done. And so we're just stuck in this perpetual cycle because of stasis and laziness. In reality, maybe we don't just assume people don't care about the agenda that 81 million Americans came out to vote for. Maybe we don't just assume that the biggest climate bill in history of the world is a page 7 story. Maybe we don't just brush over the fact that millions upon millions of Americans will have their healthcare costs capped and their prescription drug costs lowered. Maybe it's not all about the fear porn, and maybe people actually want to feel like all of the work they did organizing and calling and yes, even tweeting to get people to the polls in 2020 was actually worth it, because legislation like the Inflation Reduction Act proves that it was. So with that said, here are 2 action items. First off, follow those guys over at Pod Save America. Their YouTube channel is called Crooked Media. There's a link right here on this screen and in the post description. It takes 2 seconds to hit subscribe and help make our news ecosystem on the left more powerful than that on the right. And then that way, when the next person logs on and starts clicking on political videos to figure out where he or she stands, that person is more likely to see videos from the left than the right. This is a group effort, so let's make sure that we support, subscribe to, and engage with all of the creators on the left. So start with the folks over at Crooked Media. And second, make sure that when you talk about what's at stake in November, it is twofold. It's the threats posed to democracy on the right, and it's the extent to which Democrats have delivered in an almost unprecedented way in just the last 2 years with a razor-thin majority, because both matter. We need to make sure that people know that while electing Democrats is the one and only way to stave off a power grab by an outright authoritarian party, that's not all they're good for. Democrats, with a margin of exactly 0 extra seats, took action on climate change, they took action on lowering drug costs, they took action on shoring up the ACA, they took action on protecting veterans' health care with the PACT Act, they took action on bringing the semiconductor chip industry back to the US with the CHIPS Act, they took action on making sure that we had funding for COVID testing and vaccines with the American Rescue Plan, they took action on rebuilding our crumbling infrastructure, they took action on bringing back every single job lost during the pandemic that the former president allowed to explode uninhibited. They took action on bringing the unemployment rate down to 3.5%, which is a 50-year low. And they're on the verge of canceling student loan debt and reforming the Electoral Count Act. So the next time that the media sells the same tired narrative that Dems are in disarray or that all people care about is gas prices, just know that they're not enlightened, they are lazy. And if they listen to people instead of relying on obsolete bromides to decide what people want, our media ecosystem would be a lot different, as it should be. So let's reward people telling the full story, because that's a hell of a lot more in tune with what real people want to hear. Before you go, couple things. First, if you want to support my work, the best way is to subscribe to this channel. The subscribe button is right here on the screen. And second, if you want to see and hear more from me, check out my website, briantylercohen.com. That way you can get links to my podcast, merchandise, ways to donate to voting rights organizations, and so much more. The thumbnail is also right here on the screen, so go check it out. And as always, thank you so much for watching.